Good morning, everybody. It's Psychic Liz Cross here, and thankfully, Mr. Photon agreed to this. We are going to probe where are these kidnapped victims. So we just want to reiterate, we are not taking sides. This is a very, very complex situation. We just want to know where the kidnapped victims are. Okay, so we're going to start probing to see if they're still alive and to see if maybe they were underneath that hospital that just got bombed. And so we'll just start from here. Now, who is this, Mr. Photon, please?
So we have Yahya Sinwar, and he's head of Hamas. So we think he'd be a good person to have information to probe on the location of the hostages.
Okay, so let's ask him, I have a connection with him now. His energy is extremely intense. That's the first thing that I can tell you. Like, very, very intense situation. Obviously, he's very focused, though. Are you the head of Hamas? Yes, he is. Okay. And are you in charge of all the military? No. So do you know where these hostages are? He does. Okay, so he knows where they are. We did probe, or we asked for questions also from the Patreon. Those of you who wonder where we get a lot of this material from, it comes from our Patreon subscribers, patreon.com/remote viewing and beyond. And we do a lot of, questions, putting questions together, brainstorming, all of that on there. And it's a great group. So let's have a look here at some of these questions. First of all, Mr. Photon, where do you think we should start with this? Do you want to start with your little list, or do you want to start with this?
We can start with that.
Okay, great. So let's ask, who gave the orders of starting this? So this has been planned for a long time. Okay. That's the first thing I'm getting. How many years in the making has this? This has been 4 years in the making. 4 years. Yeah. Okay. I'm surprised by that. And excuse me. And how did you get the weapons to do this? So they were supplied weapons. Were you supplied money within? No. Do you currently have electricity where you are in Gaza? No. Are you actually in Gaza right now? No. Okay, so this Sinwar chap is not in Gaza. Where exactly are you? He's outside of Gaza. Why are you outside of Gaza? He is like hiding. Okay, so are the hostages still alive? Some of them are. The hospital that was bombed, were any hostages in that hospital? No. We have them somewhere else. Are they above ground? No, they are below ground. Okay, how many miles of tunnels do you have underneath Gaza? Approximately altogether, he's telling me 500 miles of tunnels.
Wow.
That's very well, yeah, considering the size of Gaza. I mean, it's not that big.
Yeah. So this is how all kinds of arms and contraband moves in and out.
Oh, is this how you move the contraband in and out of Gaza? Absolutely. Yes, good question. Are you planning to use, so this is a question from one of our subscribers. Will the young hostage children be indoctrinated into Hamas military? No, they're going to be used in negotiations. So what I'm getting is that if things start going really bad for Hamas, they're going to be used as a negotiation tool. Are the children still alive? Yes, barely. Are you feeding the hostages? No, they're not really feeding the hostages. Are they getting water? No, they're not really getting water. So they're severely dehydrated and they are not being fed. The babies, are they being looked after properly? Are they being looked after by militants? Yes, they're being guarded by militants. Are you allowing the other hostages to actually help care for the babies? Yes. Okay, so there, obviously there's going to be some female hostages in there. They're allowing them to help care for the babies. Are the hostages in pitch black total darkness? Most of the time, yes. Okay. Do you have any lighting in these tunnels? Yes, they do have lighting in these tunnels. Are all the tunnels lit? No. So how do you have lighting where these hostages are? So they're using battery operated lights. Okay. Do you have your hostages all in one area? No, they're spread out. They're multiple areas. They're spread out. And do you have the tunnels lined with booby traps and other explosive devices? Yes, all over the tunnels are lined with explosive devices and booby traps. What else can we ask?
Do they have information that special forces are on the trail of them right now? Are they close? Do they know?
Ooh. Do you have information that the special forces are on the trail of you? No, they're nowhere close. Have you seen any special forces? No. Do you believe you have any special forces infiltration into Hamas? He says that's always a possibility. Okay. Are you keeping tabs on what's going on with these hostages every day? No, not every day. That's somebody else's job. That's not his job. So I feel like that's somebody else's appointed role as a military leader. Whose idea was it to go in and take these hostages? We all agreed, he says. They had to do this very strategically. And he's saying that they needed these hostages. If they didn't have the hostages, then they believe that Israel would just flatten Gaza. Okay. Their own personal thoughts, feelings, and opinions.
Right.
What else could we ask here?
So let's see here. So these underground tunnels, so there's 500 miles of them. They have the hostages spread out over different locations. So it's not very likely that even if special forces found those tunnels, there would be a lot of ground to cover to get in there. I almost feel like we want to grab the other side, like if we could group the special forces and see where they're at.
Okay, so that's a good idea. I told you, early morning interviewers think on their feet. All right, so let's go special forces and I've got them. Okay, wow. Are you in Gaza? Some of them, they're already in Gaza.
Okay. And do they have any idea of where the hostages are right now?
Do you have any idea where the hostages are right now? No, they do not.
So they're just kind of sitting and waiting on intel to be able to create a mission to go in, right?
Are you waiting on intel? They're monitoring, right? So what I'm getting is they're monitoring cell phone transmissions, mobile phone transmissions. Do the hostages have any of their phones on them? No, they've been stripped of their phones, and they're not picking up signals on these phones.
Right. Yeah, that would be a pretty, obvious thing to to get rid of, is the phone. It's the number one tracking device in the world. So do they have any leads off any of these bugs that they're putting on the cell phones?
Do you have any leads from the book? Yes, I mean they're tracking the leaders. They're tracking the leaders. Are you able to intercept communication with regards to these hostages? No. Okay, so I get this, right? With these apps like WhatsApp and all these other apps that people are communicating on that are encrypted, people can no longer really intercept these transmissions, these messages, anything like that, because they're encrypted. So it's really acting as a protection on both sides. To be fair, on both sides. They can't, intercept their messages. They can't intercept their messages. So
they can't intercept the content of the messages because that's
right.
encrypted, but they can see who's sending them, what time they're sending them. There's metadata, it's called.
Are you picking up on the metadata? Yes, they are tracking metadata. What is metadata?
So it's kind of like it's not the content of the message, but it would include things like, who sent it, what device, maybe where they're located. You could get information from that, right? Just not the content of the message.
Yes. And they're all using burner phones is the next thing that came through. So multiple burner phones, SIM cards, changing phones. It's very, very hard to track this at the moment because they could be using one number one day, one phone one day, dispose of it, and the next phone. Are there any phone signals underground in these tunnels? No. Okay, there's no way to send these messages out from these tunnels.
Yeah, so how are they communicating then from the tunnels?
How are they communicating in the tunnels? How are they communicating? Are they communicating through radio? No. They're doing it kind of the old-fashioned way. You tell one person that person is the runner. Do you have runners in the tunnels? Yes, they do. They have runners in the tunnels. How many people altogether are in these tunnels? There's a few thousand.
A few thousand. Wow. Well, I guess they have to cover that much ground, right? There's 500 miles, you said? That's crazy.
That is a lot.
And also like logistically, like, do they have maps of these tunnels? Like they must have, is that just all the people who know the tunnels that well?
Do they have maps of the tunnels? Yes, everything is mapped and tracked. Do you have a whole underground system? Yes, they do. Do you have like streets and things like that? Yes, it's all named. There's different areas. They have names. There's different names for these tunnels.
And how big are they? Like you can drive vehicles through them?
Ooh, good question. Can you drive vehicles through these tunnels? No.
Oh, okay.
Any of the tunnels, can you drive vehicles around? No.
So they're getting around like on foot or bicycles, or
are they on foot? Mostly on foot. But how are you moving weapons around? Do you have like carts? And yeah, they do have like carts when they're moving like stockpiles. Or what do you have storage? Weapon storage down? Yes, they do. They have large vaults of weapon storage. This has been ongoing for years. They have been working on this, stockpiling weapons, getting ready, training people. This has been going on for years.
And is the logistics of this, is this stored on digital devices, or is it all like old school so that the information can't be hacked?
Ooh. Is the information of the tunnel stored on any digital devices? No.
Wow. Okay. They're
No.
smart.
Where are the maps to the tunnels? They have them. And are the maps to the tunnels held inside Gaza? No. So the maps to the tunnels are held outside of Gaza. Now, how did you memorize? Like, how are they color coded? Are they named? As in, do you have signs up? Yes, they do have signs up in these tunnels. Are they like, how do your soldiers know that many tunnels? It's part of the training. It's part of the training. They work under in these tunnels. Are any of these hostages held underneath any hospitals in Gaza? Are any of these hostages held underneath any hospitals? Yes, they are. So not the hospital that was bombed, but another hospital. And you have how many groups of hostages do you have? They have 5 groups of hostages.
And the entrances to these tunnels within Gaza, are they, so they're underneath like buildings or institutions, or?
Where are the entrances? Good question. Where are the entrances to these tunnels? Are they through buildings? They're through the ground. So are they, do you enter them by like a sewage system? I mean, sewage system is connected to the tunnels. Do they have running water down there? No. Do they have sewage systems down there? Sewage systems, it's sort of, so there are sewage systems down there. Are the sewage systems and the tunnels, are they linked? Yes.
Okay, well, that makes sense, right? I mean,
Yeah,
they probably
so
off the existing structure.
Yeah, so the next question is, like, are the hostages sitting in, sewage conditions? No, they're not. Does it smell of sewage down there? Yes, it does. In a lot of places, you can smell the sewage.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. If it's connected to it, I'm sure there's not like great ventilation down there.
No. Oh, that's a good question. Is there ventilation down there where the hostages are? Is there any ventilation? There's a little bit of ventilation, but it's minimal. Are they going to run out of air down there? Yes, they could run out of air.
Oh, wow.
They could. Do you pump air? Like, do you have a ventilation system throughout the tunnels system? They do have a ventilation system, but trying to cover 500 miles of tunnels with a ventilation system is very difficult. So there's a lot of places that are not ventilated. Do you blow air through the tunnels? Yes, they do. And the reason I asked that question is because they just showed me like a fan set up somewhere that is taking air from outside and blowing it into the tunnel system. So do you have a lot of those fans going? Yeah, they do have several of those.
Are they in close proximity to the hostages?
Are those fans in close proximity to the hostages? Yes, they are.
Okay, so that would be a way that, that would be a way to identify where they are for special forces, right? Because if you know what I mean? Like out of 500 miles, you're trying to come up with some way to like narrow down the areas where they could be. So close to ventilation, that might be something they would, if they suspect they're underground, that would be what would you call it? Something to look for, right? Ventilation.
Oh, yes, like a clue. So where it's most ventilated. Are there rats down there? Yeah, there's loads of rats down there. Oh God. Which I guess rats are the least of their worries right now, but I just, it's just not really good conditions because, strategically and military law, if anybody wants to follow military law, when you do take hostages, you have to feed them, you have to care for them, you have to make sure they're not being tortured, you have to, follow these rules. You want your hostages to be in good shape, right? You want them to be in good shape. Look, we are taking care of them. They're still alive. They're here. You want to keep them alive for as much as possible if you're using them as a bargaining tool. But the conditions that these hostages are being kept in, it doesn't sound like they're really very much interested in keeping them alive. They can barely function themselves. I mean, I know, what are you going to do now that the electricity and all of that has run out? We'll survive. You see, he's just gung-ho. He says, we'll survive. And they probably planned for that. And what about the food being cut off? You will survive. Do you have plenty of food? Yes, they do have plenty of food for their military. Is that also kept in the tunnels? No. So the food is kept in different buildings. Do we have any entrances to these tunnels from any of your buildings? There are some entrances to the tunnels in buildings. Yes.
Like buildings associated with them, like their organization?
Buildings associated with Hamas. No, that would be a dead giveaway.
Yeah, that would be too easy, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But definitely, what about schools? I feel like schools. What about places of worship? Places of worship. What about hospitals? Yes, there's one, one or two, one. So there's an entry point. Is it at the downstairs in the basement of the, yeah, so towards the basement of the hospitals, of the hospital. What about the school? Is it at the basement of the school? No. So they have like secret passages, secret doors for in schools. Take it, the schools are closed. Yes, all schools are closed right now, obviously. And what about like office buildings? Or yes, what about residential buildings? Yes. So they do have entry points in buildings as well.
Okay. So does Israeli intelligence or the special forces, do they have any idea that they are underground?
Do you have any idea that they are underground? Yes, they do.
Okay. And have they thought about the ventilation? Because that to me is like a dead, that's what I would be looking for immediately. That brought it up.
The ventilation. Yes, it's under consideration. I mean, they're looking at loads of different avenues here. Have you thought about the entry points? Do you know that there's some entry points at the base of hospitals? No. Do you know where the entries are to these tunnels? I mean, they do know of a couple of entry points, but no, they're really flying blind here, which that is surprising in itself. Like, how did this happen? How did, I know there's a lot of questions, but how did it happen? No, I'm not going to make any predictions on how long this is going to last. This is a very volatile, very fast moving situation with a lot of quantum probability. So if I start making like loads of predictions, it doesn't matter if I get 50 things right. If I get one little minor detail wrong, then everybody's like, oh no, Liz, you're completely wrong, and it ruins the whole probe. But over 2 years ago, I did have a probe that I did. Unfortunately, that video is no longer accessible on YouTube. That channel was taken down. But I did have a probe that said we would end up in a near World War III situation. And I named like Russia, China, and Iran. And of course, at the time, we didn't understand what was going on. And you could sit there probing and probing and probing, but you just run out of what you're going to ask. But obviously, this is what's going on now.
Right. So, big picture wise, do we see, the bigger powers behind this getting involved if this escalates, like Iran and, maybe even Russia? I mean, Russia's aligned with Iran.
Are we going to see bigger powers they're already getting into position.
Right. They're in position right now for sure. Like the United States is obviously in position. But do we see any catalyst that actually, brings them right into this?
Is the hospital bombing going to bring, I mean, we're moving the chess pieces closer and closer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just we're all making the next moves based upon your opponent's move. Is Russia involved? Russia's already involved.
Yeah, for sure.
Has Russia been funding Hamas? I don't feel Russia has been funding Hamas directly. Iran, have you been funding Hamas? Yes, of course. Yes. Okay, that's a strong yes on that one. But, we're not taking sides here. My biggest concern are these hostages. I mean, they've taken babies. Now, anybody out there, no matter what your political affiliations are, like, come on, babies. What do those babies do? You know what I mean? They don't even know. You know what? They don't know the country that they're in. They don't understand any of this. And yet you've got babies down there. Like that's pretty brutal.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, can you think of any other questions to ask? I think we pretty much covered a lot of this. Let's ask this. Are you willing to negotiate at the moment? I'm asking Hamas, are you willing to negotiate? No, they're not negotiating at the moment. They're not at that stage. They still believe they're going to fight and win. And they're looking, he just pointed over his shoulder. And I'm saying, what do you mean when you're pointing over your shoulder? And he's like, we've got them on our side. And he's pointing directly at Iran. Was Iran behind this all the time? Yes.
So yeah, they planned this. So they're kind of the ones that helped plan for 4 years.
Were they the ones that helped? No, I feel like Hamas did most of the planning. But definitely like the backing, like we've got your back.
Right. The
support, yeah, is there. Let me ask the other side, the special forces. Are you going to start the ground? So they're not really in the ground offensive, right? Are you going to start that? No, they're sort of waiting at the moment. Everybody's just kind of waiting. I mean, there is fighting going on, but they're waiting for the next big move. Everybody's sort of just in their own corner, and they're waiting to see what the best and next move is going to be, right?
Yeah, no one wants to show their hand yet.
Right. They're holding on to their cards, and I'm wondering who's got the ace card up their sleeve. That's the problem. It's going to be something big to pull out that ace card up your sleeve. Right.
I mean, how does Yaha see this playing out in how does he see this as a success for him? I really don't. I feel like they're backed into a corner, right?
He says we're going to win. He says we're going to win. We're going to take back our control. He's saying to me, okay, in his own personal thoughts, feelings, and opinions, we're taking back Israel. Okay. Now, somebody has a few good questions here. Ask the hostages if they know where they are located. So I'm going to group the hostages together. Do you know where you're located? No, they have no idea. Do you know you're underground? Yes, they know they're underground. How long did it take for you to get there? It took about 3 hours for them to get there.
Wow.
How were you transported? I feel like they had to walk. Were you blind? They were blindfolded as well. So they had to walk through these tunnels with their hands on the shoulders of the next person in front of them. And they were, forced at gunpoint, like guns being poked into their backs, keep walking, keep walking. What about the babies? Who carried the babies? The militants carried the babies. So what can you see? I'm asking the hostages, what can you see? They really can't see anything. Why can't you see anything? They're in darkness, right? There's not a lot of light down there. Are you all in one room? So the group that I'm talking to, they're all in one room. Are you talking? No, there's no talking. Okay. There's no communication, no talking. Have you seen any of the hostages get killed? No. Are they taking them away? Yes. And are they killing them when they're taking them away? Most probably. So right now they're not killing anyone in front of the group of hostages. Obviously, they don't want their hostages to become hysterical. There's whole psychological involvement here. You don't want your hostages to really become, crazed and hysterical, and they can't take the pain and they're screaming and crying. Sorry, what was that question?
What would be the goal to killing them? I mean, they are valuable to them.
What would be the goal to killing them? So those that are not really self-sufficient, they've taken a whole range of people. They've taken people in wheelchairs. They've taken people that are severely disabled. They've taken young. They've taken old. Do you have males and females together? No. So males and females are separate. Okay. So you've got the males in one place. Yes. And you've got the females in another place. Yes. So they have separated them, male and female. What about the children? Are the children with the females? Are they with both males and females? Yes. So it depends on the age of the children. What about the young children? They're with the females. Right. So they now separated them down into male and female, and that's how you're going to find that they're separate. What can they hear? So let's ask them, what can you hear? A lot of it, just footsteps. They can hear like pipes clanging as well. Can you hear the rockets and explosions? Yes, they can hear that. Let's ask this guy, Sinwar, if there's massive explosions, could it affect the integrity of the tunnels? Yes, it can. So, but if they're wanting to save these hostages, they have to be careful what's being bombed and how it's being bombed, because they can ruin the integrity of the tunnels. How strong are the tunnels? They're vulnerable. So if you start cutting off access to these hostages as well, are these hostages really deep in these tunnels? Yes, extremely deep. Are there many different levels in the tunnels? Like, do we have different levels? Like there's, like a first story and then going down and deeper and deeper? Yes, there's 6 levels in the tunnels.
Wow, 6 levels. Okay.
What can they smell? What can they smell? Just really like old sort of air. It's hot. I feel like they're hot. There's not a lot of ventilation. They're hungry. I can see some of them grabbing their stomachs. Are you being, they're getting minimal water and food. Very, very minimal. Right. Is anybody being beaten up? Yes.
Yeah.
Do you recognize any of your kidnappers? No. Do you understand the language that's being spoken? No. So presumably the hostages they speak English. They speak a mixture of English, Hebrew. Do we have any Russian? There's some Russian languages. Anybody speaking, or any of these militants speaking any of those languages? No. How are the militants actually communicating with you? They're using like hand signals, right? So they're kind of like pointing and directing that way. Are they treating you well at all? No, they're not being treated well. Do you believe you're going to be rescued? There's hope of a rescue. So they're very hopeful that somebody's coming to rescue them. And I feel like, especially the female group, all they're doing is just praying and praying and praying and praying. Are Absolutely. You allowed to pray out loud? No, they're not allowed to pray out loud. So they're praying in their heads.
Yeah. Wow. It's very intense.
It is very intense. And, anybody who has a family member missing, right? It doesn't matter whose side you're on. Especially the babies. I mean, that's just like, the babies. I mean, if you really want to get people's emotions involved, I mean, you take babies, right? Let me ask this guy, why did you think you wanted, was it your goal to take babies? No, the goal wasn't actually to take babies. It was just to take anybody. And why did you target the kibbutz in Israel? Why did you target them? Because they were the perfect targets. You could get a lot of people in a concentrated area, and you could kidnap them very easily.
Right.
Well, so we will visit this again. And if anybody does have more questions, which I'm sure that a lot of people will be going, Liz, why didn't you ask this? Liz, why didn't you ask that? Again, if you're on the Patreon, feel free to message me direct, patreon.com/remote viewing and beyond. Anything else from you, Mr. Photon, that you can think of right now?
I mean, I kind of want to ask if the intelligence services are using psychics.
Ooh, okay. So let's ask Hamas, do you use psychics? Have you ever used psychics? Do you use psychics now? They have. Are you
Really?
using a psychic now? No.
Hmm.
Let's ask the Israelis. Do you use psychics? Yes.
Yeah, I figured they would. Hmm.
It's absolutely amazing to me how how they managed to pull this off. To be honest, like I was telling you before I started the video, when you go to Israel, which most of my listeners know that I've been to Israel, it was just, it was great. I went there historical, check out the history and everything. When you're standing in the passport line, it's none of this just watching people on the camera. Like, I believe their special forces or their Mossad or whatever, they come up to you and they look you dead in your eyes. And, I'm kind of like, they're so intimidating. Scary. And I'm looking back like, I don't know what I should be doing here, right? Like, I don't know if I should move. Should I, twitch my nose or, and I just kind of looks like, why are you looking at me? But not in a aggressive way. And then they moved on to the next person. It was really bizarre. I'd never experienced that before. And I've been to many countries, but I've never had like their special forces or Mossad or whatever they are at the airport. Maybe somebody listening can let us know. Come up and just look you dead in your eyes and they lock eyes with you. And I was like, you can't think. You know what I mean? You're
Hmm.
just like, I don't know what I should be doing. Should I move my arm? Should I,
That's the point. They're
what should
trying to
I
disnerve
do?
you, right? That's their whole goal. Is to try and
Well,
disnerve you if there's
yeah,
anything.
it's like, like but they do. Because I was like, okay, what should I do? Should I move my eyes away? I didn't know what to do. Like, do I move my eyes away? Do I act like I'm not intimidated? And it's a long stare. It's not like a short glance, right? Do I, do I stay in one spot? Do I say anything to them like, "Hi, how are you?"
You have
Uh,
beautiful eyes.
right. You're giving me the death stare right now. It was so obviously they're trained to do that. And then he just moved on to the next person. I mean, he even looked at my kid, right? Not for very long,
Hmm.
but and then my husband, and then you get to the passport and they're like, "What's the reason for your visit?" And of course we're like, "Well, we're here to see the history and it's educational." And then the other thing, in case people who are listening don't know this, they actually don't stamp your passport. You get a piece of paper in your passport. You don't get a stamp. At least certainly when we were there, they do not stamp your passport. And the reason they don't stamp, I was like, this is so crazy. Like, why don't they stamp? I want my stamp in my passport. But I found out, I asked the concierge and I said, why didn't we get stamps in our passport? And they said, oh, that's because if you want to travel to other Arab countries,
Oh, yeah, right. That makes sense.
you can't have a stamp in your passport that says you've gone, you know,
I think
to
it's the other way
Israel.
around too. I think if you go to Israel and you have stamps from other Arab countries, that's kind of might be a red flag for them.
Oh, let's ask, is it a red flag when you have stamps from Arab countries in your passport? It depends. It depends. They've already followed the paper trail. They know, now you have to put in your passport details when you're flying anywhere. They're already doing all the
Oh, sure,
security
yeah.
checks when you're
They,
on, I mean, before you even go. And they know what to expect as soon as the plane lands. They know exactly who's coming and going.
right. But to your point, the security is unbelievable in Israel.
It is. It is. So, but if we probe and try to find out like how this actually happened, then it looks like, we're taking sides and we're alienating. Look, I don't want to do that, right? Because I'm not even into all that. But I would like to think that at least these babies can be saved because, anybody that's held a little baby in your arm, they're so vulnerable. they just, they don't have a clue what's going on. They just need to have love and to eat and, sleep and, have their diaper changed or nappy and, just be rocked. And I should imagine that the babies are picking up on all of this incredible tension. Their brains are wiring at the rate of knots. I mean, they're just, that's what we do as babies. We're wiring and wiring up for survival. And
right, and the trauma is then setting up later on in life to be, you know what I mean? That's even though they're not conscious of this is rewiring them in a brain to, from an early age that they are in this dangerous situation. So that's definitely something that will, carry on.
Oh yeah, and for generations to come if they make it out alive.
That's right.
This isn't something that's gonna go away. They may not even remember this if they make it out alive. But this is something that is going to be passed on for many generations. You can't have someone's brain wired up in this way without traumatizing their offspring and their offspring. That's how these things grow generationally. I mean, you only have to read about people that were in various wars and how they were traumatized by the war and how that had a knock-on effect to the families. Right. There's loads of books written about that. So, with these babies picking up on that tension, or these young children, the tension is so that, they must be absolutely terrified. And I just, I hope that these babies at least can make it out alive. But anyway, all right, we'll stop this one here. I know this is very intense. I'm sorry about it. Yes, I used to be a police dispatcher. You put your emotions aside and you have a job to do and you do it. Okay, that's how I can do this. I was a dispatcher for many, many years in a very big city, London, and 12 hours a day. You were listening to highly traumatizing situations. You just learned to get on with it and do your job. So I look at this as doing my job. All right, Mr. Photon. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too, Liz.
Thanks.